the favorite son of Texas. Oh, the eyes of Texas are upon
All right, fine.
you.
Thank you. Very good. All right.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Spender, let me ask you something. You always lived in Texas?
Son, where else is there? Yes, born and raised right there in good old Austin, Texas.
Oh, Austin. And you were born in the capital of Texas.
Not only was I born in the capital of Texas, I now have all the capital in Texas.
Yeah, well, now, before we get carried away here, let's introduce our third panelist, the homespun philosopher and elder statesman from the Green Mountain state of Vermont, Mr. Calvin Potts. How are you feeling today, Mr. Potts?
Why, not too good, as long as you ask.
Well, now, what's troubling you?
I got a bad tooth. Been aching me like blazes all day.
Now, son, let me tell you something. I got the greatest remedy in the world. Any kind of ache or pain you got. Works every time whenever I have a toothache, backache, a headache, any kind of ache or pain you can think of. I just go on home to my ever-loving bride. She hugs me and kisses me and rests my head on her shoulder. And she caresses my forehead, and then she hugs and kisses me some more. Sure enough, in no time at all, every ache and pain I have is gone. It works every time, son. No kidding. You ought to try it.
Well, that sounds like a good idea. Is your wife home now?
Well, now, wait. Well, that's all now, panel. Now, settle down. Settle down. Let's try this one. It's our first item. And this is an actual item from the newspaper. In Lansing, Michigan, town officials received and cashed a taxpayer's check that read, pay to the order of the thieves of City Hall $15.25 for water from a bunch of crooks.
You never heard of paying for water before?
Never heard of paying, ma'am.
That's what I said.
Look here, I paid $1.25 for a glass of water right here in New York yesterday.
$1.25 for a glass of water?
Well, on second thought, maybe that was for the bourbon.
Yes, I'm beginning to see the light there, Mr. Spender.
What'd you say there, boy?
I said I'm beginning to see the light.
Well, you wouldn't if you'd had that bourbon.
Yeah.
Right now.
As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted.
Oh, now, I beg your pardon, Miss Gingold. I guess I just got carried away.
That's one job I wouldn't mind helping with.
Now, come on.
Son, am I going to have trouble with you again today?
No more than usual.
Please. Miss Gingold, I believe, was talking. Now, what did you want to say, Miss Gingold?
I forget. What were we talking about?
We were talking about the taxpayer who sent a check saying pay to the order of the thieves at City Hall $15.25 for water from a bunch of crooks.
Oh, yes. Well, as I was saying, I never heard of paying for water before.
Ain't you never gone swimming in a public pool?
I was saying, if the gentleman who sent the check objected, he should have bought the water on credit.
Water on credit?
Yes. Haven't you ever heard of charged water?
I think you misunderstand, Miss Gingold. You see, in America, charged water, that means carbonated water. It's just water with bubbles in it.
That's right. We use that all the time. It's just like champagne without the champagne.
You must have some sparkling parties.
Yes.
Well, now, I don't know what the fuss is all about. $15.25 for water. That's nothing. Nothing. I spent $22 million for water yesterday.
$22 million for water?
That's right. I bought the Gulf of Mexico.
Come on, Mr. Spender. You bought the Gulf of Mexico for your son?
Well, why not? A kid's entitled to a wading pool, ain't he?
Now,
A little color in the water.
yeah, I realize, but that's kind of hard to believe.
Are you kidding? I was going to buy him the Atlantic Ocean, but it was over his head.
Well,
Kind of a short little fella now.
With your expenses, I'll bet it's tough to keep your head above water, huh?
Yeah, that was pretty bad, son. Yeah, not bad for an amateur, though.
Thank you, Ted Mack.
Now, don't you get nasty.
Remember, folks, in New York, the number is Luxembourg 2.
Oh, Javier.
Son, I'm trying to be nice to you, but one of these days I'm really going to give you a piece of my mind.
Well, be careful. I think it's the last piece.
Okay, now, boys, please. I'm laying down the law here now. If you don't talk without insulting each other, I don't want you to talk at all.
Folks, the next 20 minutes of silence comes to you.
Come on now, Mr. Potts, please.
Now, look, being a Texan, I want to say this. Why don't you and I just bury the hatchet?
Bury the hatchet? Well, that's okay with me.
Good.
As long as I get the first swing.
Well, there you go again.
All right, now hold it. Enough's enough. I want to discuss that taxpayer with the problem of paying for the water. Can we
But
get back
it's
to...
ridiculous. The taxpayer pays for the water, and the politicians are all wet.
That's quite
Yes, you're right, Miss Gingold. Politicians, they're all alike. Now, It's like Sylvester Slump back home there. In a way, he reminded me of Christopher Columbus.
Sylvester Slump reminds you of Christopher Columbus?
I think I just said that, didn't I?
I know. Yes, I know you said it, but I don't get the connection.
Well, I mean all politicians. They're like Christopher Columbus. He's the fellow that set sail and didn't know where he was going. When he got there, he didn't know where he was. And when he got home, he didn't know where he'd been. And all on borrowed money.
I think I'm beginning to see the connection there.
Well, for once, I'm with you, Potsy. I know what those politicians can be like. Believe me, I know what it's like to have a thief in office.
What office was he in?
Come on.
Now, look, son, I don't like you casting aspersions on my integrity.
I wish I knew what that meant, because you don't like it, so I'd like it.
What makes you so ornery?
My mother rejected me.
You poor, poor child.
Well, I'll be all right if I can just rest my head on your shoulder, Miss Gingold.
Why, Mr. Potts, I do believe you're trying to flirt with me.
Well, don't hold me responsible. I've been out in the sun all summer.
You're a doll, Mr. Potts. In fact, I wish I had a doll just like you at home to stick pins in.
Now, look, can't we get some semblance of a panel here? Mr. Spender, you were talking about politicians and the threat of having a thief in office. Now, what's the point you were trying to make?
Yeah, well, now, I was just saying that down home in Texas, I hate to admit it now, but it's true. We had one guy in City Hall who ran away with $104 million.
$104 million?
Yeah, that's right, boy. 140, well, it was $104 million, and if it's one thing I hate, it's a penny grafter.
Yes, sir. Well, I tell you, in the item we're discussing, the man only paid $15.25 for the water.
Well, like I said, back home in that grand old glorious state of Texas, I never have that problem. I don't use water. The fact is, I've never had a drop of water touch my body.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
So you did. Come on now, don't encourage him. I think... Will you just disregard him, Mr. Spender, and go on with what you were saying?
Yeah, I will. Like I was saying, I don't use water in Texas. In Texas, I take baths in hot and cold running champagne.
Hot and cold running champagne.
That's right, Miss Gingold. I got the only bathtub in Texas with an imported ring around it.
And I presume you don't have a drain, just a cork.
Yeah, and I use the best stuff, too. The best vintage, 1927.
1927 was a wonderful year for bathtubs.
Now, listen, why don't we pull out the stop on this item? We'll move along, because we come to that part of the newspaper we all look forward to, and this is interesting, the gossip column. You all have it in your newspapers at home. And to fill us in on what the latest gossip in New England is, our own Mr. Potts, the gossip columnist for his hometown paper. You ready, Mr. Potts?
I'm ready. 14 years I've been writing the column, and I ain't been sued yet.
Well, that's a sterling record. Go right ahead.
Well, now, my first bit of news is about the upcoming wedding between Lucy Brickbat and Ezra Flick. That's Chicken Flicker Flick's boy. Mm-hmm. And the whole town is getting ready for it.
Oh, it's going to be a big to-do, eh?
Yeah, well, you see, nobody ever thought that Lucy would be caught by Ezra, so we was all kind of surprised.
Lucy is the town belle, I take it, huh?
Oh, yes, she's a humdinger. She's a perfect 36.
Well, you know, I'm going to be at the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City next week, and if Lucy's a perfect 36, she sounds as if she could have been in the competition.
Well, no, I don't think so. Lucy is kind of a funny 36. 12, 12, 12.
Oh, is that?
Well, now, I must say, that sounds like a pretty scrawny, puny gal, son. 12, 12, is she?
Why, let me put it this way. When Ezra put the engagement ring on her, it slid clear down to her waist.
Oh.
How chic, a diamond belt.
No, not exactly. Ezra knew that would happen, so he gave her a leather ring.
A leather ring. Now, what other news do you have, Mr. Potts?
Well, now, let's see. Little Cynthia Kurgel.
Who is that?
Cynthia Kurgel.
Mm-hmm.
The 17-year-old beauty. She's having her coming-out party next Saturday.
Oh, she's being presented to society?
Yeah, no, she's being paroled.
Well, now, you know, it's always nice to have one of the local girls home. Any other tidbits, sir?
Why, I just heard from a New York reporter that the hit Broadway show, Gypsy, it's being made into a movie.
Oh, they're making a movie out of Gypsy?
Yes. The whole thing's going to be filmed on location in an empty store.
Well, that should be interesting, and I hope I see what you mean, but I don't. You go ahead.
Well, you're about the only one that did, if
Yes.
anybody did. But I got a couple more items here. I hear that that new Lana Turner movie about copying a magazine, that's really a big hit.
The new Lana Turner movie about copying a magazine. Now, what's it called?
Imitation of Life.
I've seen it.
Yeah, that's the worst joke I ever heard.
You ought to keep your ears open when you're talking sometimes.
Is there any more, Mr. Potts?
Just one. Now, you remember that actor we had back home? He used to play what they call summer stock. Tarleton Facade, his name.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned him before, didn't I?
Yes, I think you have. He is the actor.
That's what I said. He's a kind of a vain fellow, real vain. Bigger ham never lived.
Yeah, I've heard you mention Tarleton before.
Well, Tarleton, he was out on the river last week on his boat, and he fell overboard.
Oh, no. Really?
Well, maybe you say so, but you'd have a hard time convincing Tarleton.
Mm-hmm. Well, what happened, Captain?
Why, it was late at night, and Tarleton, he fell overboard. And Tarleton can't swim.
Mm-hmm.
But he was treading water pretty good till the rescue launch come by, and then it happened.
Mm-hmm.
The ham in him was his undoing.
How?
Well, as I say, the rescue launch come up, and Tarleton, he was treading water okay, and then the launch in the dark, it turned its searchlight on Tarleton, and gracious, that done it.
What happened?
Well, he saw that spotlight shining on him, and he took 3 bows and drowned it.
Oh, no.
Now, look, son, do you expect me to swallow that?
I wish you had instead of Tarleton.
Yeah. Well, now, that closes our gossip column for today, folks, so we're going to try another item, and we're going to investigate this one from Washington, D.C. The Department of the Interior has again asked Congress to investigate reports that excessive drinking is done on commercial airliners. Now, tell us, panel, what is your opinion of this congressional investigation planned for drinking on airliners? Do you think it should be curtailed?
Yes, I do.
Well, now, Miss Gingold, the drinking should be curtailed?
No, not the drinking, the investigation.
Oh, I see. I didn't know what you meant.
Well, now I got to admit that I never been up in a plane myself.
Yeah, I always like it better with a pilot, too. Don't sit there stewing, don't you get it? You said you ain't never been up in a plane yourself, and I snap right back with I like it better with a pilot. That's a real suspender snapper, son.
I ain't wearing suspenders.
Well, Miss Gingold, what about you?
I'm afraid the conversation is getting too elastic, even for me.
Yes. As you were saying, Mr. Potts.
Well, as I was saying, old Lem Dawson back home, he flew once. He had to go to the boiled peanut seed convention in Dayton.
Boiled peanuts?
Yeah, well, the peanuts wasn't boiled. Lem was. Anyway, he said it happened coming back on the plane. According to Lem, the whole thing was drinking. It was like one big flying cocktail shaker. Instead of stewardesses, they had barmaids.
Amazing.
Yeah, even had a million-mile bartender.
Is that right? How about the crew?
Well, Lem said the crew was real congenial. The co-pilot was a good mixer.
I imagine.
Well, that's charming, but it sounds to me like an exaggeration.
Exaggeration. Lem says they hit an air pocket, and one fellow was thrown right out of his safety belt, clear off his bar stool.
Well, now, that may be. But still, in all, most flights are run pretty orderly. I know one time I was on a flight. One fella got sort of noisy after a few drinks.
What'd they do, Mr. Spender?
Just what any respectable establishment would do. They threw him out over Pittsburgh.
Oh.
How ghastly.
I agree.
They could have at least waited till they were over Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't do much flying on commercial airplanes.
Why, I thought you did lots of flying, Mr. Spender, up here from Texas and all.
Well, I reckon I do, but only on my own plane. Got a whole fleet of them.
Oh, you really are wealthy, aren't you?
Maybe by your standards, son, but in Texas, it's nothing for a man to own and fly his own planes.
Oh, do you fly your own plane?
No, boy. When I go into a dive, it's El Morocco. When I hit an air pocket, I don't even mess with it unless it's lined with 20s. Laugh it up, boy. If you've been waiting for me to get hot, this is it. Be alert there. Pay attention. If you're listening, you should be laughing. These are jokes, son.
Them's the jokes. I'd hate to be here when you start talking serious.
All right, now, fellas, settle down. Let's don't start that again.
I heard about one plane, and the drinking was a disgrace. This plane, it was flying at 20,000 feet.
20,000 feet? Why is that a disgrace?
The passengers was flying at 22,000.
Well, that is.
You could hardly expect us to believe that.
Well, now, if you didn't believe that, wait till you hear this. The pilot was a St. Bernard.
Now, wait a minute. Don't encourage him. The pilot was a St. Bernard?
Yeah, they had to let him on. He had his own liquor.
I see.
Well, I don't see what's so terrible about drinking in aeroplanes. On my last flight, everyone had a glass or two, even the pilot. And he made a perfect instrument landing.
An instrument landing, Miss King?
Yes, his instruments were a corkscrew and a bottle opener.
Very good. Now, I don't know about you people, but I'm getting woozy, so let's move on to the next topic. And it's the woes of the lovelorn again, and to answer the many troubled hearts, we call on Miss Hermione Gingold. Should we start?
By all means.
Our first letter is from Mr. H.H., who asked that his address not be revealed.
Coward.
He writes, I am the warden of a large state prison. I am celebrating my 10th anniversary. I would like to make a small occasion of it. What kind of an affair do you think would be most appreciated by the inmates?
An open house.
That would be.
Yeah, that's my gal. That a way to chuck, Miss.
Well, now, a letter from Miss G.H. of Scranton, and she writes, I hear you mention on the program the other day that you kept a dog. Is it trouble to keep a dog in an apartment? Is your place always a mess?
Oh, no. Ever since I've had my puppy, my place has been absolutely clean. Why, yesterday I cleaned it 12 times.
Yes.
A dog may be man's best friend, but it looks like it sure can kill a woman.
This is from Miss G.G. of Mount Kisco, and she writes, I'm a single girl, 22 years old. I've been raised by a very strict old maid aunt. She tells me I should learn to treat men like dirt. Now, what does she mean?
Hide them under the bed.
Oh.
Now, do you know, I say I wouldn't mind being a little speck of dirt in your house, Miss Gingold.
That would be kind of difficult for you, Mr. Spender.
Well, thank you, son.
I mean, being a little speck of dirt.
Easy now, boys. Come on.
No, I shouldn't have
Get off
talked to
of
him.
it. Now, there's a letter from a lover of natural history who writes, why does a stork stand on one leg?
That's easy. If he lifted that leg, he'd fall down.
I think we have time for one more, I'm afraid.
Well, I hope so. I'd sure hate to quit with that one.
Yes, sir.
Someone opened the door and he crawled in.
This letter is from Miss V.H., who asks, when you're going with a fella, does love begin when you sink in his arms?
Yes, and often it ends with your arms in the sink.
Yes. That is our advice from the Love Lawn for today. And Miss Gingold, you have been more than an inspiration.
You've been useless.
Please. Let's move on to newer and brighter horizons. An item now from the world of science. A noted surgeon has stated that electric stimulation of different parts of the brain seems to change the personality. Using monkeys, the doctor found that tiny electrical impulses in one part of the brain would make the subject worried. Another section made the subject overeat. Another section made them subtly and overwhelmingly affectionate. It might work the same way with human beings.
Now, hold on now. Wait a minute now. Let me see if I got this straight. This fellow says that a tiny electrical charge in a certain part of the head could make a person overeat.
That's what he said.
My wife must have been struck by lightning.
Was that before or after she married you?
Come on.
I'm
now.
not listening to you.
Is your wife a heavy eater, Mr. Spender?
Well, now, she claims she's a light eater, but what she means is that if it's light enough to lift, she'll eat it.
Does she eat a lot between meals?
Now, at our place, there isn't any between meals. Just one continuous serving. Goes right on. Never even quits when we take trips.
Well, now, I think we all enjoy a snack in the car.
A snack? I got the only Cadillac in Texas with mice.
Oh, you don't. Now, you think that possibly this electrical stimulation may have given her such a large appetite?
Well, now, I reckon not. She's never participated in any experiments.
She married you, didn't she?
Come, Panel. She's never had her head wired, has she, Mr. Spender?
No, but that's the only part of her that ain't.
Did you say that this electric stimulation to certain parts of the head could make a person terribly affectionate, almost uncontrollably so?
That seems to be the theory, yes.
Well, that explains it.
Explains what?
Why, our hired man, young Ephraim, he stopped going with his regular girlfriend, and he's been running around night and day with old widow Mosby.
You think there may be some connection?
All I know is he started seeing her the very first day she complained that she was getting short circuits in her hearing aid.
Is that right? You think she suddenly might have become extremely affectionate?
All I know is that Ephraim's the only hired man I ever had that whistles when he's shoveling fertilizer.
No, I'm Do you suppose electricity has anything to do with it?
Well, I don't know. Let me put it this way. For her birthday, he gave her 12 roses and 24 batteries.
Batteries? What kind of batteries?
Oh, Ephraim made sure that they was ever ready.
Yeah.
That was romantic.
Yes, and he had a card attached. He wrote a little poem. He sent it along saying, Roses are red, violets are blue. Here are the batteries. More power to you.
Well, I'm kind of sweet about that. That's quite a story there, Mr. Potts.
Yeah.
Anyone else notice any change in the old Widow Mosby?
Yes, I think the word got around. In our little town, it's pretty hard to hide a live wire.
You mean she suddenly started going out with lots of men?
Oh, yes, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Old Widow Mosby may be wired for sound, but it sure ain't high fidelity.
And all because she started wearing a hearing aid?
That seems to be the case, all right, yes.
Pardon me, I didn't hear what you said.
I said...
I still can't hear you. Where can I get one of those electrical gadgets?
Oh, now. Miss Gingold, do you believe that electrical impulses might change a person?
Yes, I do. A gentleman I know was changed or charged, I'm not sure which, by electrical impulses.
You mean he volunteered for an experiment?
No, his wife wired a chair for him.
Oh, no. I think we better get off of this shocking point here.
Yeah, get short-circuited there.
Yeah. Now, this is the time of the year, friends, you know, when sports pages of the newspapers attract more attention than ever, and no one could give you a more analytical review of sports than that great outdoorsman, Bart Spender.
Well, now, thank you, son. Now, if the rest of you all will just hush up for a little while, I'll give you the complete sports picture in a nutshell.
You're the nut that can do it.
Look here, I don't want to have to go on like this any longer. Why can't we behave like old friends? Huh? Bill, still, let's try to act like brothers.
Well, all right.
Fine. You be Abel and I'll be Cain.
Now, look, once and for all, will you two cut this out? Mr. Spender, please confine yourself to sports.
If Mr. Spender doesn't want to talk about sports, I will.
Now, ma'am, what do you know about sports?
Oh, I know quite a bit. I've been out with enough of them.
Yes. Well, I don't think this is any more sport news for today. And now here's an item from Chicago. A firm which issues insurance for trucks and buses has come up with an interesting finding. Their figures show that the drivers with the best safety records are the men with a happy home life. They recommend that every driver have a good breakfast and give his wife a hearty goodbye morning kiss.
Yes, we heard about that system up our way.
Did one of your bus companies try it out?
Yes, they tried it, but they had problems.
Oh, what sort of problems?
Why, the boss told all his men that the next morning they should all give their wives a big hearty kiss, like you said.
Well, what was the problem?
Well, next day, out of 100 drivers, by noon, only 2 showed up for work.
Well, I still think it's a good idea. Anything to promote highway safety. We're very conscious of safety down in Texas. We've cut down accidents tremendously.
Oh, you're enforcing driving regulations?
Oh, no, son. We built separate highways marked his and her.
Oh. Well, that makes sense. But do you think that a happy home life makes for a better highway safety?
Yes, I do. Providing the woman will do the smooching and none of the driving.
Yes. You don't think women make good drivers?
No, they don't, son. I can't figure it out. The same woman who can spot a blonde hair on your lapel clear across the room still can't see garage doors 30 feet wide.
Listen, do you think a good kiss in the morning would make you a better driver, Miss Gingo?
Well, I think it would cut down on my accidents on the highway.
Oh, really? How?
Yes, because if I got a kiss before I went driving, half the time I probably wouldn't go driving.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see the logic, but would you like to try this system?
Well, I don't know if I can.
Why not?
I only have a learner's permit.
Oh. For just a moment, I'd like to ask you if you can name a famous former Yankee shortstop.
Now, how would I know anything about Yankee, present company accepted?
I appreciate that.
Oh, not at all, son.
A shortstop? Would that be a player in your American cricket, I suppose?
That's right. His name is Phil Rizzuto.
Are these shortstops some sort of a midget?
No. I'm afraid not, Miss Kingo. Well, that's it for today. My friends, you've all been charming as usual. And meanwhile, if you see any amusing articles in the papers, please send them along to us and keep your funny side up. Thank you very much.
Funny Side Up is written, produced, and created by Ben Jolson and Art Bear. Executive producer, Jack Hurdle. Your announcer is Hal Sims.
Do you know who said, "They that can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety"? Those words were written by Benjamin Franklin in the year 1759. Even before the United States of America had come into being, Franklin realized that the path toward freedom was a difficult one. He knew that there would be many people who would prefer easier paths to the difficult one that led toward freedom. These people, he felt, did not deserve to enjoy freedom. Just as there were in Ben Franklin's time, there are people today who would choose what looks like the safe and easy way to protect American freedom. They would be willing to sacrifice some of their liberties in order to be comfortable. But the surrender of a little freedom soon leads to the surrender of all freedom. Liberty can be protected only by constant vigilance and the willingness to fight to protect it, if necessary. Remember the words of Benjamin Franklin. They are part of your American heritage. Temporary safety must never be purchased at the price of liberty.
Funny Side Up has been brought to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.